reactions, takes in bodily reactions. There's a cocktail of hormones, adrenaline and everything poured out, which puts me in a heightened state of alert. And then perhaps I realize, oh, that snake, it's not a snake at all, and it's just a stick. And I breathe a sigh of relief, and those tensions build up. But the body gets... This assessment is the interesting thing. People have thought a lot about it. What assesses that a situation is fearful? There must be something which knows it. And of course, people have come with many answers. They were quite... If you read the literature and psychology about fear, you will be really astounded at some of the propositions which have been made there. But it is this process of assessing a situation as being potentially dangerous, which generates this shock, and people have started looking, what is this assessment? We know it must be there, and also it happens in a flash of a lightning. And the Grail message says that this assessment, or as I understand the Grail message, it says, this assessment is taken by the spirit. There are neural pathways which pass it very quickly down to structures in the limbic system, and that's what science now knows. And science thinks some structures in the limbic system assess the situation as being dangerous. But the limbic system, after all, it's just a piece of flesh consisting of neurons, and also the amygdala. How does it assess that something is potentially fatal? So what we know from the Grail message is that those structures of the limbic system, which are deep down, they are not cortical structures, they are not forebrain structures in the strict sense. They are sitting directly on the midbrain and on the brain stem, so directly very deep down. And we know that the nerve tracts and nerve fibers then all go into the region of the stomach, of the intestines, of the solar plexus, where many people nowadays think about. And actually, when we are being frightened, we often fear it in the region of the stomach. And so I just want to say, I don't want to go too deeply into it, but the spirit, that eternal self, the true self, interfaces to the physical body via the solar plexus. And that's why we have this burning there, or the emotions there quite often in the stomach region. And so the information of the situation goes on very quick pathways. They are pretty much ensured. They don't go via the forebrain. There's an upper way which goes via the forebrain of the sensory information, but there's also a pathway which bypasses that. It's called the lower pathway. It goes directly to the limbic system, and from there to the down the spinal tract to the solar plexus. There it interfaces with the spirit. The spirit makes this incredible fast assessment, and that goes from the spirit back to the limbic system, to the amygdala, and activates there everything. The heart rate goes up, the breathing goes up, adrenaline and many other neurotransmitters and hormones are being poured into the blood, cortisols and everything. The body's put in a state of high alert, because the spirit is really interested. It reacts naturally. It wants that no harm happens to us. That's the natural reaction. And that's really programmed in the spirit. And when the spirit reacts normally, it does not seek death. That's a very unnatural thing. And ideologies or thinking which promotes that or is very unnatural, and we see it from that reaction. We want to stay alive, and of course we also fear for the others. Fear is not a selfish motivation. We fear for our loved ones. If I have a family, I fear for them. So let's look at a situation which we saw on television recently.
Okay, looks like Brother Gregory is joining us. Let me just put him online. Okay, hopefully he's on there now.
Hello?
Hello, Brother Gregory. Welcome to the show.
Hello?
Welcome to the show. You're online now.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks for joining us. Let me, dear listeners, welcome Brother Gregory to the show. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I've got my... Okay. Right. Brother Gregory, please tell us where you are and how's the weather where you are?
Well, it's cold here in Brussels.
Okay, very good. So, yes, weather here in London is, we've been raining all day long today. And it has been cold as well, actually. I didn't think of that. Yeah. So,
enjoy the cold while it's there.
Yes. Okay, so welcome to the show. We've just had our first question, what is fear? Brother Ryan has been talking about that. And Brother Ryan, would you like to just repeat that little phrase you started with when you explained what is fear?
The definition.
The definition of fear, yes.
Yeah,
just so that Brother Gregory's sort of up with it as well.
Okay. Fear is an emotion gripping us when our spirit assesses a situation as being potentially dangerous, perhaps extremely dangerous, either to our own well-being or the well-being of our loved ones. And we were building on that statement, yes, with examples and going a lot into details, but yes, I'll just repeat that statement. Fear is an emotion gripping us when our spirit assesses a situation as being potentially dangerous, perhaps extremely dangerous, either to our own well-being or the well-being of our loved ones. Yes. And we talked about this word, what assesses a situation as being potentially dangerous, and so that we are gripped by fear, or if it's a slighter case of danger, it could be just apprehension or a disquiet if it's very soft. But yes, that is what we talked about, and of course many other things too.
Yes.
But
can you just, when you were answering that question, you also talked about is it lymphatic system? How do you say that word?
I
didn't know what that meant. Actually.
Yeah, the lymphatic system. Okay. When we talk about our nervous system, we've got, of course, the forebrain and the hindbrain, and we've got, in fact, a little bit more. We've got the brain stem. On that brain stem, and then we've got the midbrain, and on the midbrain, on the top of the midbrain sits the forebrain, and the hindbrain sits practically on the brain stem or the midbrain.
Right.
So on this interface between forebrain and midbrain, which is also the interface between hindbrain, there's the limbic system.
Or limbic system, yes.
Limbic system. These are not cortical structures, but these are structures which are very deep down because they sit directly on it's practically interface to those old parts of the brain, to the midbrain and to the hindbrain.
Yes.
So they are very involved in emotions, in all kinds of emotions. And in fear, there's a limbic brain structure involved, which is called the amygdala. And the amygdala, and there are pathways from our sensory organs. They go to the limbic system, and there's a branch. Some go directly into the deeper brain structures of the midbrain, and from there on, we know from the Grail message, they flow down, they affect the hindbrain, but they go down the spinal tract to the heart plexus, to to the solar plexus, and there is the speak interface with the spirit, with the true self. And I'm saying that this information is passed on this fast track down to the spirit. The spirit assesses the situation.
Yes.
And that goes almost unconscious. That goes before our day consciousness really sets in. We see the snake and we are frozen.
Yes.
And and then it goes back up. The spirit assesses it as a threat to limb and life, perhaps, that situation. And the limb, it impresses again the solar plexus, it impresses the cardiac plexus, the heart. That's why we often feel an anguish in the heart. It pulls together, and then the limbic system starts with the firework of setting the body in a state of alarm. Morphines are being, cortisols, adrenaline, everything. Hormones are poured into the blood, and muscles tense. The breathing becomes more intense,
Yes.
and the heart rate goes up just to put us in a state of utmost alert, because the aim of the spirit and of nature in such a situation is it wants to the spirit wants to save the body. It wants to be still on earth, and it doesn't want the body being destroyed by whatever.
Yes.
And it's this initial this point of assessing a situation, which is very interesting, and where science actually they don't know yet. They know it must take place, but science does not know how it is done. They think it's mostly done in the amygdala, which is one of the limbic part of the limbic system. I hope that has been clear, and I think I make now a break. And
yes, thank you for that, Brother Riyna. So, and the example you gave actually, that let's say you're walking in the park and then you see a snake and suddenly you freeze and whatever, but then you suddenly realize actually that was not a snake, it was just something sticking out and not actually a snake, but it was still the fear was there because it perceived to be a snake rather than reality. So
could have potentially been very dangerous. You didn't see it exactly, you didn't know it exactly.
Yes.
In fact, what happens that when the sensory information comes in, part of it, a crude version for it, is really sent down from the limbic system down to the hindbrain and midbrain and brainstem and down to the solar plexus. Another part, much more detailed, is sent to the forebrain, but the forebrain is, of course, the cortex. It's much more slower, and it starts analyzing it. So the reaction of that shock and the freezing,
yes.
And what is it? It's in a way good because you are motionless. So the snake, if it's a real snake, that freezing might really save your life. And because you do not threaten the snake. And then, of course, meanwhile, the forebrain has been processing the information, has much more detailed information, and can see, oh, it's actually not a snake, it's just a funnily twisted stick.
Yes.
And then, of course, that whole thing subsides. But that subsiding, of course, can take a long time. There are even some hormonal systems which just set in after 20 minutes or so. I have had that experience. I was involved in some kind of near accident, and at the moment I was very quiet, and I was driving a few minutes afterwards, and suddenly all the blood shot down in my feet. They became so heavy, and that I had to stop. And but there, of course, I was in that critical moment, I was on adrenaline. But okay, now
Yes.
I stop.
Thank you for that, Brother Riyna. Brother Gregory, I'd like to go to you now. So let's look at the different types of fear that there are. We started saying this fear of the unknown. And this might be something a bit strong to start with, really, because, you know, we are told to fear God. I don't know if that's quite the unknown, but basically, when we say that, Brother Gregory, what do we mean when we say fear God? Should we worry about that He'll punish us if we do wrong, or is there something respect behind that word fear God? Well, what is meant by saying fear God?
Well, thanks for that particular question. What is meant, generally, what is fear? Fear only arises when there's a sense of danger. And this sense of danger springs up because one is either unprepared or has no knowledge on how to respond to this danger. Wherever you have a person who knows how to respond to a particular type of danger, that fear vanishes. The case of the snake which was mentioned, there are the snake catchers. So whenever such a thing comes up, they are not afraid because they already have enough knowledge how to respond to all these things. The same thing goes with what is unknown. It's unknown because many a person do not realize that there are laws that govern this creation in which they live, and they haven't made it, they have not been well acquainted with these laws, or their inner capacity is unable to handle it. So there is a lack of understanding on how to respond to all this, and therefore there is a sense of danger that because of my lack of understanding, I may fall a prey. The same thing arises when one is dealing with issues that pertain to the Almighty, because many persons are not aware of how to respond to issues, or they really think things are in an arbitrary fashion, that anything can happen, which is really false. And there that scenario where many are afraid because they lack the knowledge or they lack the conviction on how to approach these particular issues. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you for that, Brother Gregory. Okay, let's look at, move forward from what we said, fear of the Almighty or fear of God. Or do you want to say something?
No, I just want to ask you.
Want to say something? Go on.
Fearing God, is that in the Grail message?
I would, me personally, it's not like that, because it's only the fear of consequences of acting against God, I would say. It's more that.
But that's a completely different thing.
Yeah, no, but in the lots of beliefs, they do say these things, these spiritual teachings that believe fear God and fear the. And it's, I think it's aimed at putting you on the straight and narrow, so you don't. But then, the thing is, there's no deeper understanding. It's just being scared of something, you know, that's more powerful than you, rather than. And I think it. In a way, you can say fear God, but it should be with understanding, rather than just like a bit like what Brother Gregory said. You said you don't fear, you know, because God can do anything, so you're already scared about whatever, you know. It's like you don't know what you're doing, and at any moment something can happen.
May I come in? The thing is that fear of the consequences of violating rules, which rules the individual does not even know. So all this appertains to equal.
Are you there, Brother Gregory? We just lost you for a second.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I'm
just
in
can you say
here.
the last
Maybe
bit?
the
Yeah.
connection is poor.
Okay, yeah, just repeat the last few words.
I said it's fear of the unknown, because one lacks the understanding, and therefore there's the consequences which may fall back, because one doesn't know the reactions or the responses when they can.
Okay, we lost you again.
What
You're
appertains to the Almighty
Yeah.
is so great. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're back now. Fine, carry on.
Sorry, I think it's breaking up. What appertains to the Almighty is so broad and great. So many are afraid that they don't have a real understanding, and therefore they sense they are always reflecting that the responses may not be true, and the sense or the danger only arises from the lack of understanding of the laws through which they themselves came into being. Hence, we have works like or the words of Christ, which clearly shows how man should live in creation so that he can go forward courageously rather than go forward in fear due to lack of knowledge or due to indolence.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. I've got... Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful with that fearing God. God definitely does not instill fear in human beings, and does not so. It's, in fact, the Grail message talks about a God which instills confidence and a courageous going forward, and helps, in fact, towards happiness and towards the light if we obey those laws. And it's definitely nowhere said that it's instilling fear or that it should be obeyed with fear. That is in other religions where you have an arbitrary God, where you can't rely on anything. If God wants it, you are dead the next minute. If God, so God will. And there's no reason or nothing. This arbitrary God is not the God the Grail message after Sheen or Jesus Christ has proposed. That God is of an infinite goodness, and the human being can feel comforted and feel at home in that infinite goodness, provided he keeps to the laws, to the laws which are placed in creation by that God. And we have this, for example, he even has not to fear about his daily bread. We talked about the what is it called, that prayer, Vater unser, the Lord's Prayer.
The Lord's Prayer.
The Lord's Prayer. And the first lines, there is this line, and give us our daily bread. And we can in fact rely on it that we get this daily bread. If we fulfill all these conditions which are set in that prayer before, we promise that thy name be hallowed before that line comes, that we have pure reverence for God in our hearts, that we recognize him as our Father. Father, who you are in heaven, that's the first line. Hallowed be thy name. That's a complete and a wonderful attitude which is expressed in those lines towards God, to say you are so beyond anything comprehensible, that hallowed be thy name. Then we promise thy kingdom come before that line comes with give us our daily bread. Thy kingdom come, which means we do everything so that the laws are being here, that we follow his laws, and then we do, and we participate, or we do everything which is in our strength to bring that kingdom of heaven down here on earth, to create a heavenly situation. That is the big thing to some differences like official Islam or extremist Islam. That is creating a paradise here on earth, not a tear-off valley, and where kidnappings and people being blown up in thousands and Christians being prosecuted and thrown into furnaces happen on a daily basis. That religion which is proposed here, if properly understood, that religion proposed by Jesus, is really a religion which brings paradise here on earth. There is very little to fear from other human beings in such a thing. And so, thy kingdom come here on earth as it is in heaven. And only then comes that line, give us our daily bread. But this is when those conditions beforehand are fulfilled, I do not have to fear, I do not have to be anxious about my daily bread. It will just come. Some interpretation I once heard in a newspaper, some person commented, he even put the attention on that daily bread. He said, don't think about tomorrow, just trust that we will get our daily bread if all our other things are being fulfilled. So I definitely want not that there is the impression arises that there is a God to be feared, to be on the knees, and we do not know what happens next. This fearful God, that might be the one in official Islam, but it's definitely not the God here.
Yes.
And so,
if I may,
yes, go ahead.
Come in. I'm not quite sure what happened in many other religions, but there's a particular situation where man has to fear the consequences of his activities. Here is a scenario. We now know through Christianity that the personification of divine love was sent to this earth to enlighten man of the laws that runs creation. So we have the Lord Almighty sending his inborn son. As if that is not sufficient, he also sent the outborn son. And these are fraught with disasters, with difficulties. Yet they came and fulfilled. The consequences will be that for those who shut themselves, such that the messages that have arisen through the inborn son and the outbound son, those who shut themselves have already sown a seed or have blocked the possibility of any salvation. Then they have reason to fear. They have reason to fear out of their stubbornness or out of their indolence. That is the scenario that you find in many cases. Whatever a religion says has to be examined, whether it has arisen out of culture, which culture is only a starting point, which must be examined. For, as we now know, through the walk in the light of truth, the Grail message, the key here is to examine all that comes across your path. For man has the innate capabilities of doing so. Refusing to examine will not grant you the secure knowledge. Or not having the secure knowledge means there will be danger. Hence, fear will arise.
Thank you, Brother Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Bro Riyna. And the topic for discussion tonight is fear. And we'd love you to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in the studio, it is a UK number. It is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. Okay, so I want to go on another aspect of fear. I had a question which in a way you've already answered, is where people have beliefs and they're holding on to those beliefs, and something new, let's say the Grail message comes, which disagrees with their belief and throws light on the matter. Like, for example, we're talking about fear right now, but then something that where, let's say, in their belief there's I will say contradiction, maybe even, but they're not able to give up or overlook, just even though they can see logically this is illogical what they're believing in, they can't give that up because they have still got a fear. And one of the fear we have already discussed just now, the fear of God, that might be, oh, this is a knowledge from God, we can't turn against this knowledge, no matter it sounds illogical. No, I can't turn away from that, because if I do that, I'll be rejecting God as well. That is a fear that somebody might have. Oh, I'm giving up my religion, and if I give up that one part of that religion, then what else can be wrong? I don't know, and I can't tell. But here I think my two colleagues have already said that whatever it is, you have to weigh and examine everything, and there's the laws that you have to consider. And then probably in most of these teachings, they are not aware of these laws. They're just only the rigid dogma, let me say, or whatever belief that happens to be. That is what is being followed rather than being understood or assessed. So, and the independent way to assess is, we've said it here many times, is looking at examining it with being aware of the laws. Because if it doesn't align with these laws, it can never. That is not reality. That is just, you could say, delusion. So that was the fear. That the other aspect of the fear, you could say, people were unwilling to give up what they believe because they think if they do that, they will turn against God. So this is one aspect of the fear. But I think we've answered it already, because we said you have to be courageous. And so now I want to talk on a different matter. I'm going to go to Brother Gregory. Brother Gregory, people, let's say, when they discover they have some terminal disease like cancer, let's say, or something debilitating happens to them, where they lose a limb, or they're even blind, let's say, something like that happens, and they don't know why. First of all, if I look at the fear side of it, first they fear what are the consequences of that, being blind, let's say, or having cancer. Obviously cancer, it's like a terminal thing, almost certain. I know things have improved now a lot, and then there's consequences of that. So because when, let's say, somebody has cancer and they're most likely they will die, then there's the people, their loved ones. They, not only the person who is affected is worried about his life being cut short, also the people around, the loved ones, they worry they're going to lose somebody, and so these things happen. So the fear suddenly arises, and how I'm going to cope with it, and things like that. So what I would ask you then on that, Brother Gregory, how should we handle that fear then? Should we fear those things? Because and I will say some of these things arise. Let's say they arise suddenly, and there cannot obviously be an obvious cause. It's not like they're unhealthy people. Something just happens to them that they get this cancer, and there's no sort of obvious reasoning why it's happening. So in a way, there's not even a logical way to accept, oh, I got this cancer because this happened, I did this. They're just now having to face something. So my question to you, Brother Gregory, about that is, should the person have the fear when they have this sort of situation, like cancer, let's say, and how should they handle it, really? That's what I would like to ask you.
Well, thanks. You said, how should they handle it? Where there is lack of knowledge, one may refer to that scenario as a scenario of darkness. And where there is darkness, there is also the danger. And that danger arouses fear. But where there is knowledge and clarity, then one is in a better position to respond to whatever challenges that is likely to come one's way. In fact, the more knowledge one possesses, the humbler the person becomes, and many a thing which would have struck that person down could be redeemed symbolically. Therefore, the first step is to strive for knowledge which transcends not only the earthly, but many other things, such that one is not ignorant about reactions, about returns of what one has sown in the past. Only a knowledge that gives clarity can grant confidence, such that one may strive forward courageously. In the scenario you just mentioned of cancer, there are many other ways that cancer itself could be cured. And there could be other advices rather than the one scientific way which they know. There could be other way which may be much simpler to cure their particular ailment. But because they don't know about this, fear arises. And it is not possible for one to know precisely how long one has to spend on earth. And therefore you have a scenario where one is ill. There is always the fear. Oh, suppose I give up my ghost right now, what will happen? Again, fear of the unknown, because the human spirit or the personality has no knowledge of how, or of the schemes or of the operations that lie in this glorious creation. But as soon as they strive after knowledge, many of these things which one refers to as fear will disappear gradually. There need not be fear, because as long as we strive to live aright here on earth, whatever the returns is will only be a measure of how we have been striving. So if we've done that which is right in accordance with the laws of creation, then we are certain that the returns will be good for us. If, on the other hand, we bury our head in the sand like an ostrich and do nothing, then we are evading our responsibility. That is to strive after knowledge, after wisdom. And we create a scenario where we do not know what is going to hit us. And such scenarios is what causes fear. Fear out of ignorance. So the key thing for man is to strive after knowledge. Knowledge which transcends what happens here on earth. Some of the questions is, why have I come to this earth? Why are these experiences? One, keep asking questions, and if they ask diligently, along the line, answers will be found, and that one will sort of give them solutions and give them the confidence that they are striving after that which they must.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. Actually, I was watching the BBC News, and there's sports. Well, he was an athlete actually. His name is Michael Johnson. He was a 200-meter runner from America. He had the world record. I think it's in the 80s he had it. I'm not quite sure. 80s or 90s. Anyway, he's a broadcaster now. He gives commentary on the Olympics and so on. Anyway, about 3 or 4 months ago, he had a stroke. I mean, this is a person who eats healthily and keeps fit, and is in a very good state. And so when he had the stroke, the first question, he had a fear. First emotion he had was fear, because he didn't know what will happen next. Will he survive? Or, what will, how he'll be affected, and will he need help from his relatives or whoever? Will he need some support? And then after that, he said he got anger because he didn't. I think this is the reason why he said he got anger. It's like he didn't know why he was having it, because he's eating healthy and all that. It didn't make any sense to him. And then suddenly he also realized that just being angry, it was just like being negative, and it wasn't good for him. And so then he said he started to use his Olympic training, his athletic training that he had, where it's like, because obviously he's trying to go faster and whatever, so he starts looking at the situation, what he can do to improve himself, what he can do about it. So then, in other words, he became calm about the situation. And what happened was, so he listened to advice, when he was being examined, and they said, okay, we want you to start moving your feet and things. That's what he was advised by, I think, by the doctors or so on. And then the funny thing was what he said, okay, they said, do this walk for 200 meters, which is actually the distance he used to run. And it took him 15 minutes to actually do that walk, to get, which normally if he's running 200 meters, it's supposed to be, I think, 20 seconds. So obviously, I mean, this is after a stroke, obviously. So, but the thing was, when he did that, it's like he started bringing himself back to how he used to be, rather than having that fear. And so, but I noticed in all of this, what he was assessing things, he was not looking for the cause or why this happened to him. Initially, he did want to know, but then he sort of moved away from that and just tried to sort of help himself to just be himself as he was before. And actually, after 3 months, he seems to, his voice, you could not, if he hadn't said he had a stroke, you wouldn't know, because his voice is just normal. There was no slur, and I didn't see him move at all, but he seemed to have recovered pretty much. So, I don't know, maybe I'll go to Brother Riyna about this one. Brother Riyna, would you say, do people have to know, because initially you want to know why this is happening to me, and in this case, the person didn't pursue that anymore, and rather tried to recover himself and do, try to just logically sort of do the right thing, if I can say, because he actually was getting quite worried initially. Like I say, he was thinking, oh, I won't be able to do anything anymore, and maybe I'll need support and all that. But in the end, somehow he's calmed himself down. So, do we always need to know, Brother Riyna, why something happens to us, or it's like everything is about learning, and we're supposed to just deal with these things if something happens out of the blue like this?
Well, to human beings in current times, many things happen. Some very severe blows of fate, which really can put you in a state of terror because you are helpless. And I think it's what Brother Greg said before, helplessness, or I cannot do anything. That's a kind of situation which very much instills fear and terror then. And then of course minor blows, like a stroke, a minor stroke, where you can regenerate with what medicine provides, the right amount of exercise and things, and then you are pacified and you calm down and fear does not take hold. But as Father Greg also said, once we know, we are able here to create, to live here on earth and create a wonderful place where human beings do not have to fear each other when they interact. Nowadays, societies like this, that we often have to have fear because of how other human beings act. There are also incredible catastrophes where people are overwhelmed, and the Grail message explains why those terrible things happen. If you suddenly are surrounded by wildfires in California, they spread so fast, running doesn't help. You can in the car doesn't help anymore because the terrain is wild. You know your family is burning just now. You are gripped by incredible
Blessed Radio.
fear.
The time is 7:00 p.m.
What's that?
That's the computer. That was just the time. 7 o'clock it says. so sorry for that.
Okay, so my train is dropped. So we are put into situations where natural catastrophes or catastrophes where suddenly some human being goes mad and shoots in a schoolyard. I think I will read a story like this at children. The children cannot do anything. They cannot defend themselves. They go through that traumatic experience and bear damage for years, and we have many other things like war veterans who have experienced combat, terrible situations in combat, or Holocaust victims, which after 50, 60 years still have dreams and flashbacks with a power which it is so imprinted onto their spirit, those experiences, or they are so imprinted on their being, they cannot forget them, and they jump out at night. Perhaps I will read the things. And there are of course the mild things, like this runner who had a mild stroke, but he should take it seriously. He should say, something is wrong, and I have everything which is not good is a warning. Every blow of fate, even a minor blow of fate, that's just a little shot, and it creates a kind of reverberation in us or in the ship. But we survive, and we can drive on, and we can fix the hole if it's a ship, and it goes on. That does not mean we should not take it seriously. We should take everything seriously, because these are warning shots, and if we take them seriously, through those warning shots we have a chance to turn around, and that turning around is to embrace the laws of creation, to strive again for the light, for the truth, and establish here paradise on earth, where happiness can rule. And Abdushin himself, I want to quote that. We have often quoted it, but it's such a wonderful passage where he actually says, when we fear something, we are afraid that we suffer harm. And this person, he has suffered harm through that stroke. Afterwards he got angry and started training, and then he saw the harm is not so difficult. I almost can get over it. I can get well again. But if we want a world which is free of harm happening to us, we must then create or do no harm to the others. We had a program some time ago where this was the central theme, doing harm to others. And I just give you that thing because it says, if we do not harm others in our ways through creation, we will ourselves also not suffer harm. It's a reciprocal action. There's the big law in the Grail message which is explained. If I sow something, I will reap an equivalent thing, a like thing I will reap. If I sow harm of any kind of sort, I will reap them. Now humanity has sown harm all the time for egotistic reasons, to gain power, and whatever reasons, but they're all wrong reasons. We should not commit harm. I will now read this wonderful sentence, at least in my opinion. So this would actually create a world, or would be the way towards a world without fear. So you are permitted to wander through creation. Go in such a manner as to cause no harm to others in pursuit of your personal desires. Otherwise, threads will be woven into the carpets of your paths, which will hold you down and prevent you from ascending to the luminous heights of conscious and joyful activity in the gardens of the realms of your God. That is the basic law, After-Sheen writes, containing everything you need to know. That's unbelievable. That's everything we need to know. If you follow this, nothing can happen to you. You do not have to fear anymore. You will only be led upwards by all the threads created by your thinking, volition and actions. I will read it. And then it goes on. That is why the Son of God once said in all simplicity, love thy neighbor as thyself. So, if we follow that simple law, that is in fact all we have to know to never have to fear again. If you follow this, it says nothing can happen to you. And now, because we did not follow this, many things, unbelievable things happen to us. Catastrophes of an unbelievable extent, or wrought by man himself, but there are also natural catastrophes. So go in such a manner as to cause no harm to others in pursuit of your personal desires. Then, if you follow this, nothing can happen to you. You will only be led upwards by all the threads created by your thinking, volition and actions. Because those same threads which we create through our thinking, volition and actions, they can create wonderful consequences, and we can look forward and rejoice, look forward to the fruits which will be sown. But the same law which is mentioned here, if we create harm to others and work in a selfish way and create, because of our selfish ways, we create harm to others, then we create a world where fearful events will happen, and we will be forced to experience fear and to experience terror. These are wake-up calls, however awful they are. That person who is cut in by the fire and his life is threatened, and he sees himself engulfed in fire, and he knows I'm gone I have about a few more minutes. The heat is overwhelming. My clothes are burning. My skin is burning. I'm being burned alive. And he sees his family being burned in the house downstairs. He is powerless. There is a power stronger than him. These are the blows of fate, those wildfires. That's just one example of the blows of fate. The news are full of them. There were tsunamis somewhere else. There are rainfalls. The whole world is full of those terrifying events. And the thing is, we have to know the laws of creation, and we have to adhere to those very simple sentences which we find in the message. And After-Sheen, and we must examine, and After-Sheen, when he says then, if you follow this, nothing can happen to you, what more wonderful thing is there to say? And we can create a world without fear. So fear definitely is not a necessity, and I think that example was just, there are millions of examples like this, people who do not take those warning shots, as serious as they should be taken, because more heavier blows are waiting. And I think I will pass back to Saad and to the other people in the conversation.
Thank you very much, Brother Riyna. Brother Gregory, I'm going to go to you next. Just to continue a little bit more on this story of this Michael Johnson, the athlete. As I say, he's now just a broadcaster, not running anymore. But any case, would you say, obviously, we are saying everything happens within these natural laws. You can't go outside the natural laws. Would you say that maybe there's something, people do say people go through trials and tribulation. So not always, or in quotes, this is a karma from the past. Maybe something he needs to experience to grow and to maybe help other people, because he's a famous person. Because you hear lots of stories in the news where something happens, something bad happens to one person. Let's say a knife crime. Just making up another story. The teenagers have been killed with the knife, and the parents now get together and they want to change the sort of society, and they come out and do a campaign, to highlight this, that there's no point carrying knives because you're destroying somebody's future life. So maybe something, my question to you, Brother Gregory, is it always the karma that is happening, or is there something to grow, make the person stronger? Because they say, well, what doesn't break you makes you stronger. So and Brother Riyna did say the stroke was not actually fatal, it actually make him go stronger and recover. But maybe there's something behind it that he needs to grow bigger than that. So what do you say, Brother Gregory? Is that karma, or is there something else also involved?
Whatever happens to any person, that person must have provided a channel for it. If that channel were not there, there will be no homogeneity for that to occur. So even in the case of karma, there must be a channel. One must have done something initially to produce such a response or some returns. At the same time, whatever has struck you sort of enables you to be on the awake. That means you are forced to examine things. You are forced to be on the alert. So it could be a combination of this. It doesn't mean that because something has struck you is karma. For the scenario you just mentioned, only means that person became more on the alert, all right, before things happen. Now he knows that he can do it even after a stroke. He was able to get out of it. So he can advise others, not because he's famous or not famous, but he now has the experience. And only through experiencing can one grow strong. What you have not experienced, strictly speaking, you do not yet know. So as long as one has the right attitude, the right inner attitude, whatever the scenario, one is able to look up and struggle out of it or strive out of it. That striving may find fulfillment whilst the person is still on earth. It depends on the inner attitude, or it may be when the person has left the earth. Whatever the scenario may be, as long as one has the right inner attitude, that helps to elevate the inner man to grow stronger for more experiences, more fruitful experiences here or hereafter.
Thanks a lot, Brother Riyna. Sorry, Gregory.
Yeah, I want to say something. We all get blows And as humanity, in general, we have overdeveloped the forebrain, or we have one-sidedly developed the forebrain, and we have left our emotional qualities undeveloped, or the sense of justice, the sense of beauty. And so right now we are left with fearful things. So to the brain many things will happen. Strokes are just one thing. And one can be pretty sure if he's got one stroke and he goes on the same way, there comes another one which is perhaps more severe sometime down the road. There are tumors of the brain. Well, strokes, tumors, all kinds of cancers of the brain, all kinds of illnesses which infect the brain, because it is an instrument which is so wrong in creation, will be beset with all kinds of illnesses. And we know there are hundreds, it's just multiplying all the time, which have to do with the brain. Parkinson's, all those things, that's all brain illnesses where neurotransmitters go wrong. You think Parkinson's disease just cannot move? No, it's a brain disease. And many people contract Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, the whole dementia problems, which almost every person gets today. It's brain diseases. It's because we've developed that brain wrong. It's stupid to go back and find out the thing. Oh, where have I gone wrong? Oh, this is because I did this and this in a past life. This is not the way to go about it. The way is to realize our brains, we have one-sidedly developed our brains, and we contract all kinds of illnesses. And we have to get out of this situation. We have to find a way again to get an equally balanced brain where the emotional faculties are as developed as the intellectual faculties. And and that's the real problem. And I hear all the time from my brother's heart, oh, is there something in the past? That's not the question. We are all wrong in some cases, and we have all one-sidedly developed the brain, and it can happen to any one of us that we contract a brain disease, or contract Alzheimer's, or contract a dementia. That's very likely statistically, and we must see where we went wrong as humanity, and then once we got the right way, we have to go the right way, and everything will become better. We do not have to know that in 522 I did this, and this is why I've got now a brain tumor or something. That's not the way. We have to find out where we stay wrong, and in fact we even do not have to find out. We just have to say, now we turn around, now we go the right way. Now the first thing is, love thy neighbor as thyself. If we obey that, everything will become well. And and the Grail message explains that in wonderful simplicity and clarity.
Thank you, Brother Riyna. I've got a question for you now, Brother Riyna, about basically, we say life is a risk, or life is an adventure or discovery. And so how do we go about life then? Because, there's, should we reflect before we, every step that we take, or just enjoy, let's say, I don't want to use the word holiday, because that's not just trivializing life, and I don't want that, because we say life is about having, experiencing and having happiness, and obviously doing good, and yet we never know what's going to happen next. When we are, whichever direction we go, it's still going to be a discovery, or let's say even risk. I mean, I don't know if I'm not deliberately trying to use the word risk to be somehow negative. I just want to just see what life is. Are we meant to? How do we go into life? What sort of attitude and approach?
I think for the intellectual man, and who goes about actually in life, of course, everything is risk. And he weighs the risks. And he tries to measure the risks. Should I invest in share A? Or should I invest in share B? Or should I just hold my whole position in cash? There is risk. No one can predict the stock market. Where I cannot predict, there's risk. With life, it is different. With life, it is very simple. And the answer lies in that passage which I've read before. Go in such a manner as to cause no harm to others in pursuit of your personal desires. Otherwise, threads will be woven in the carpet of your paths, which will hold you down. That is the basic law containing everything you need to know. If you follow this, nothing can happen to you. So we just have to follow it. Once you have studied the Grail message, you are being filled with a deep trust, and this trust, you will trust then those words, nothing will happen to you. And you feel this peace inside, this trust, because you know with your feet you are on the laws of creation. This is the rock, this is the you stand on. This is the firmest thing, the only thing which can hold you forever and which keeps you in safety. And it is written here, Abdushin writes that if you think there is still risk, you are not standing aright in creation. And so I just can always draw back to that one paragraph which I read, and it answers all those questions. So the person who is afraid, who fears this might happen or that might happen, has not found the answer which lies in the laws of creation. He is not standing properly in the laws of creation and swings not properly in the laws of creation. So we could all forget those things with risk.
Thank you for that, Brother Riyna. Dear listeners, the topic we're discussing tonight is fear, and we'd love you to join us with your questions or comments. So far we haven't heard from you, so we'd love to hear from you. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366.
Of course, I think the important thing to know is we are going down now a path as the whole of humanity, where each of us and where humanity will experience dreadful situations, fearful situations. And perhaps and this has a good reason, because that intense fear, that traumatic events we are going through now, they help us to wake up. How incredible that things, and it might appear cruel, these events are not cruel. And that person who sees himself, sees his family being burned alive practically, and has to experience this, he will have, of course, he will be shocked, he will be traumatized, but this is the thing which will break up the ice on his soul. It will make the spirit alive, come out. He will then perhaps sink down, caught by an incredible fear in his heart, sink down, and perhaps will utter prayer for help in that situation. And that is the reason why we are going through those situations, why those terrible, terrific situations are happening all the time in life. One of the reasons is that we wake up. The other reason is, of course, we have sown them ourselves. And as I said before, illnesses of the brain, of course we have sown them because of the one-sided development of our intellectual abilities, with the neglect of the emotional abilities, or which is just the sense of beauty, for example, and caring for beauty and spreading beauty around and trying to be beautiful in the things, or spreading happiness by not thinking always I want to have, but there's also the give side. Let them give, let them live in a worthy place. If you are an employer, don't try to maximize the profits. Give the workers that they can live, give them what is theirs, what is due to them. Give also to the state what is due to the state. You are using the streets, you are using this huge system, you are using all those things. Of course one has to pay for it. Don't try to wriggle around, and think of the giving, that things are in balance, then things will become better. And the best thing is to have some simple sentence like this guiding you through life: love thy neighbor as thyself. Then you won't act in a way to maximize the profits. It's not the capitalism which does it, it's the human being which does it and which creates those circumstances. You can also say as an entrepreneur or businessman, you can say, and there are many businessmen who think like this. I know them, many which think, oh, I just want to have give and take must be in balance. And then we will have a better world. And gradually a better and lighter and more beautiful world.
Thank you for that, Brother Riyna. Brother Gregory, I'm going to you now. The thing is, what Brother Riyna has been reading out, the quote from the Grail message, it sort of answers everything like he already says. So every time I think of the question, I'm thinking, well, the answer has already been given, but I will still continue. So, and so it might sound like you say intellectual or, so, but I will say it. So, what I want to say, can we dispel fear? And I just want to actually check what, because this question was provided to me by a friend. So I myself, the word dispel, I'm not clear about what that means. Does that mean eliminate, Brother Riyna? Dispel?
Dispel, cast away.
Cast away. It doesn't mean that it won't come back again. It just...
Dispel, push it away.
Yeah, push it away.
It's not there anymore.
Okay. So can we... Oh, so the question is, how can we dispel fear? But in a way, I think we have already talked about it. So
yeah, we have talked about it.
We have already talked about it. Unless Brother Gregory would like to add something that we haven't...
Well, there is very little to add,
Yes.
other than to say, when the light shines, the darkness vanishes. Therefore, one should seek after the light, such that the darkness and what comes with it, fear of the unknown, will vanish. But one should know that the process of dispelling fear is a rigorous process. It's not that you just accept or acquiesce, but there is the need for continuous examination. Whatever strikes you or strikes others has to be examined with the correct attitude, and with the help of the walk in the light of truth. It will put things in the right perspective, which one can always weigh and come to finer and finest conclusions. Only in such a pattern can you dispel fear, because with clarity, all that then comes your way, you will welcome them, because many a thing you can then learn from.
Thank you.
I think I would like to mention something. We have, of course, when we go now through those fearful situations, this gives also us a chance to help and to really practice that word, love thy neighbor as thyself. And let me read about something about children. It's a longish thing, and it concerns someone called Patrick Purdy. And in February the 17th, 1989, he went to the school he grew up with a gun and stood on the side of the playground and shot at the children, just trying to kill as many as he could. And unfortunately, those situations are turning up more frequently and more frequently. We hear of those mad acts, human acts, all the time. Some people in a hotel shoots into a concert and tries to shoot 50 people. Another person goes into some nightclub and starts shooting 50 people because he doesn't like this or the other. Those mad acts we find everywhere, sometimes done because of that region, sometimes because they are religious zealots of some sort, and terrifying events. And I'm reading now this Patrick Purdy thing, what has been described in that book Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, which was a writer for the New York Times and a specialist on emotion, on psychology. So some chit, a Cambodian refugee, balked when her 3 sons asked her to buy them a toy AK-47 machine guns. Her sons, aged 6, 9 and 11, wanted the toy guns to play the game some of the kids at their school called Purdy, named after this Patrick Purdy, that killer. In the game, Purdy, the villain, uses a submachine gun to massacre a group of children, then turns it on himself. Sometimes, though, the children have it end differently. It is they who kill Purdy. Purdy was the macabre reenactment by some of the survivors of the catastrophic events of February the 17th, 1989 at Cleveland Elementary School in Stockton, California. There, during the school's late morning recess for 1st, 2nd and 3rd graders, Patrick Purdy, who had himself attended those grades at Cleveland Elementary some 20 years earlier, stood at the playground's edge and fired wave after wave of 7.22 millimeter bullets at the hundreds of children at play. For 7 minutes Purdy sprayed bullets toward the playground, then put a pistol to his head and shot himself. When the police arrived, they found 5 children dying, 29 wounded. In ensuing months, the Purdy game spontaneously appeared in the play of boys and girls at Cleveland Elementary. One of the many signs that those 7 minutes and their aftermath were seared into the children's memory. When I visited the school, just a short bike ride from the neighborhood near the University of the Pacific where I myself had grown up, it was 5 months after Purdy had turned that recess into a nightmare. His presence was still palpable, even though the most horrific of the grisly remnants of the shooting, swarms of bullet holes, pools of blood, bits of flesh, skin and scalp, were gone by the morning after the shooting, washed away and painted over. By then, the deepest scars at Cleveland Elementary were not to the building but to the psyches of the children and staff there, who were trying to carry on with life as usual. Perhaps most striking was how the memory of those few minutes was revived again and again by any small detail that was similar in the least. A teacher told me, for example, that a wave of fright swept through the school with the announcement that St. Patrick's Day was coming. A number of children somehow got the idea that the day was to honor the killer, Patrick Purdy. A quote from the teacher: "Whenever we hear an ambulance on its way to the rest home down the street, everything halts," another teacher told me. "The kids all listen to see if it will stop here or go on." For several weeks, many children were terrified of the mirrors in the restrooms. A rumor swept the school that Bloody Virgin Mary, some kind of fantasied monster, lurked there. Weeks after the shooting, a frantic girl came running up to the school's principal, Pat Busher, yelling, "I hear shots! I hear shots!" The sound was from the swinging chain on a tetherball pole. Many children became hyper-vigilant, as though continually on guard against a repetition of the terror. Some boys and girls would hover at recess next to the classroom doors, not daring to venture out to the playground where the killings had occurred. Others would only play in small groups, posting a designated child as lookout. Many continued for months to avoid the evil areas where children had died. The memories lived on too, as disturbing dreams intruding into the children's unguarded minds as they slept. Apart from nightmares repeating the shooting itself in some way, children were flooded with anxiety dreams that left them apprehensive that they too would die soon. Some children tried to sleep with their eyes open so they wouldn't dream. So I leave it there, and those symptoms have been labeled post-traumatic stress syndromes, and we can see that such an horrific event penetrates into the deepest of our memory, and that memory intrudes again in our daily life, into the dreams. Every little thing can trigger that thing, and it is of course incredibly difficult to overcome the consequences. And there are many situations where such things happen with combat veterans, women who are stalked, who fear for their life, go through similar traumas and have similar symptoms. And one way to be there is try to become understanding and help those children. And one of the ways those children helped themselves was that funny game they played, that Purdy game, by reenacting that. And it's later on described, and try that the memories abate and become less strong with you will never forget such moments, I guess. But you have to try to get the memories back and learn to go on with life. And again, to go on in the right way. To say, I'm not trying to harm anymore any other human being. I live according to the principle Christ has given to us. Love thy neighbor as thyself. And so there's probably a reason that the people involved had to go through, or perhaps not. I'm not trying to answer such a thing, but there's definitely a possibility for us to try to help if someone in our vicinity, some neighbor, someone who is our neighbor has gone through a similar experience. And those terrific things, we know they happen with increasing frequency from week to week, and that indeed is frightening, and the only way out lies in that paragraph I've read before, and which Jesus had said, love thy neighbor as yourself. Then we will have nothing to fear eventually. Things will lighten and life will become less somber, less terrific. The terrific accidents and events will decrease in number, and we might be able to breathe more freely again. And I think, yeah. Okay, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Brother Riyna. When you read that, I'll say story, but of course it's real, a true story. First thing I'm seeing there is that the children are, I mean, whoever, even if it's children or not children, that fear, that event leaves such an imprint that, not only that event itself is the painful thing or shocking thing, but everything that happens after that, they just treat it as it could be, the next thing might be as bad as that as well. And actually, it's not, let's say it's highly unlikely that that event is going to come back, in that level at least. It seems very, so they're just scared already, they're so scared, they can't just be normal, if I can use that word, again. It's like, as you say, there's long-term effect on them, so yes. It's so shocking for them. I mean, I've never had such an experience like that, so I can't really see, but you hear, like you say, all the time on a weekly basis, something is happening like this and this, and the people are so shocked. And when we say, I mean, it's easy for us to say in a way, I mean, it is the advice, love thy neighbor, but is that enough for them, for these people who have, because they're so affected, for them to come out of that? It's like it's going to be a long, slow process for them to heal, because they will be so, they just can't trust. You use the word trust. When you know that there are the laws and you can trust in these laws and you can just walk, A to Z, with your, keeping your pure heart, and, that I want to love, whatever I do, I want to love human beings and not to harm anyone. I mean, and so with those words, would they be enough for these children or anybody who's been through such a serious event, such a traumatic event? Would that be enough for them to recover from that and trust?
May I come in?
Yes, okay, go on, Brother Gregory.
One must realize that there is the complete failure of societal norms, albeit the complete failure of governments. Governments, out of fear of not being, in quotes, elected, or out of fear that they will not get what they need or what they want, they allow anything to go on. A lot of these things have to do with the government laws. As soon as the people are awake and they demand that laws be passed so as to make them safe, albeit also the children, many of these things will vanish. But when you have human laws or you have human spirits who are so much afraid, they are afraid that they will not be recognized. Therefore, they do nothing. Doing nothing has nothing to do with alertness. So you have a scenario where actions are not taken to prevent that which could happen. Here on earth, we have the coexistence of that which is good and that which is bad. Of course, that which is evil we want to make things very difficult, if not impossible, for others. And as soon as government realizes that, as soon as the government knows its responsibility and the task which it needs to fulfill, many of these things can be can be prevented, but they do not wish to. And therefore, you have that scenario which has just been described. But it is hoped that before long they will awake. And being awake is the best defense, is the best you can have for your neighbor. For when you are awake and your neighbor is awake, then many a scenario which is unpleasant can be prevented and must be prevented.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory.
Yeah, I think
You want to say something?
I do not want to. Politically, I think it's very difficult, and the real way to get rid of those happenings is, of course, to study the laws of creation and try to swing in them, and then they will disappear on its own. Such mad acts occur there are preventive measures. Recently I walked around, just a few days ago, around Parliament Square, and I saw those iron things there on the side to shield people walking from a car driving into the crowd. And of course it disfigures the whole of Parliament. It doesn't look beautiful anymore. It's pretty awful. And you have those breast-high metal barriers of sheet metal, really strong. And they are all around the House of Parliament, on the left and right side, and down the Millbank. And of course those measures, they prevent perhaps some madmen driving into the crowd. But of course, you think, what happens to the quality of life? Those beautiful buildings, Westminster Abbey, the Parliament, that Gothic thing, everywhere those barriers, huge barriers everywhere, things which stop cars. I think that's a very difficult thing for the politicians to create outward barriers that those things not happen. But what we have to try is to change the human being, and then it will not happen. And then we can get rid of the barriers again and can build beautiful buildings which must not be guarded. And we can go into planes without going half an hour through securities, because of the Muslim creed. Because we always have to feel that some plane is gone off. It affects the life of the normal citizen, and that's the one way which is. And well, I personally do not blame the politicians. I think they have a very difficult situation they are in, and they have to judge this way and that way. And I think the causes are different. But what I wanted to say, helping is not an easy thing. You have to know how to help. And with those children, of course, they will get over those things. Many of them, although they might be, even after 50 years, might have flashbacks and dreams again of those terrific events. But that's what the psychologists, the good psychologists, work about, and what every human being can do. It's later described in the book how it's called, a chapter called Emotional Relearning and Recovering from Trauma. And it shows some ways. But love is the best key to do it. And to be kind to such a human being. Those children, they have lost the trust into the social fabric, into other human beings. And they're always on the alert, like they said. When they play, they put a guard on there, looking out of the alert, if not another birdie comes up. It's a deep distrust into the other human being, and in a way they must learn that there are human beings you can trust who are of a good volition and try to help, and not help with words, and that help must be learned. And I think there are some very good psychologists who specialize on those trauma people, and can help in such cases. And I recently bought a book. Perhaps I want to bring it into that into that program. We can bring it into that program, which is of a Holocaust survivor. She's now 96 years old, and she has written a book, a wonderful book, how she got over those traumas. And with Holocaust survivors, we know that they are haunted 50, 60 years. It never ends of those memories. You cannot forget the chimneys. When they see a chimney, they panic and break out in sweat, and see those pictures again. And she has found a way out, and perhaps such books and such human beings who really overcame such a situation and embarked on the way of hope, and that it can be better, and then we can live in a way together which is built on trust and on being good, doing good to each other. That's a wonderful story, and perhaps once I've read it, I might bring a few chapters of that book inside. But I believe that however terrible the hole is we are in, and how through whatever terrible experiences we had personally to go through, there is a way out, there is a healing, and every person which is good helps towards that process. Of course, if you have only killers and fanatics and rapists running around, then no woman can feel safe anymore, no child can feel safe anymore. But let us be good that those children know there are people which they can trust, and those people you might help such a child just by letting it play and do nothing, and look at its how they play the game. That's also a self-healing process, playing that game with that murder gun, where they learn, where they shoot at times the Purdy himself. That's already a strategy how to cope with such things. So I think are we okay?
Yes, still got something. Yes, so I want to...
May I add a few things?
Go ahead, Brother Gregory.
It is well known that wherever there is a will, there is a way. If you now have society or governments or whatever they call themselves refusing to do something because they themselves are afraid of their positions, which they suspect is shaky, then one will only say it's a shame. Not too long ago, there were, for the car scenario, seat belts. Seat belts were there to at least prevent, whenever there were accidents, whiplashes in which many people perished, sometimes in the car, sometimes much later. And many governments opposed it. Why? Because they were in the pockets of the so-called car manufacturers who did not wish to. They thought one should be free to sit whatever the way they liked in a car, and if there was sudden break, people were injured, so be it. The governments at that time, all right, were too afraid to take actions with all the evidences provided. The same thing happens now. The present governments in different countries are too afraid to take actions because of they are in the pockets of others. They are afraid of guns. They are afraid of this. They are afraid of that. So where does that lead? Quagmire. Into the depths, which they themselves can see. So these are failures in societies, and one should mention it. One should be bold to point these things out, that it is not right. Whether they call it politics or whatever they care to call it, what is not right is wrong. When there is an accident, people are rushed to the hospital because we have a scenario where governments or societies have made provision that wherever there's an injury, there must be a place that they can be treated. Many say prevention is better than cure. Why not prevent all this, which, of course, many know is possible? Well, one key lesson which must be drawn out from whatever scenario, whatever difficulty, whatever punishment one has gone through, it is a lesson for the particular personality, for the particular human spirit, never ever to knowingly or unknowingly inflict such on another who, like him or her, is striving to experience. As long as one follows that particular principle, not to knowingly or unknowingly inflict such punishment or such difficulties on another, then the returns will be such that he or she will be free to live in harmony with other creatures here on earth and hereafter. That is what Christ himself has taught. What you also find in the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail message, which many, for those who are willing, can even find in the internet. For those who care to go to www.grailmessage.com, they will find many a thing which will be helpful to them here or hereafter. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Dear listeners, we've come to the end of our show, so I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Of course, we will be back next Tuesday and have a new topic, but at this moment I don't have the title yet, but we'll definitely have something. So I'm going to ask my colleagues to say goodbye to our listeners. So, Brother Riyna, would you like to say anything?
Yes, a simple word.
Yes.
Goodbye until next week, and have a fearless time.
Yes, very good. Thank you for that. And Brother Gregory, anything you'd like to say to the listeners?
Well, we wish everybody well.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, listeners, again. This is Brother Sard. Thank you for listening to us. Hope you took something from this discussion. Our aim is really to, introduce you to the Grail message, which we know in our search and journey that it gives answers to our life's questions, and in a way, logical answers which are understandable and which at the end bring happiness. That's the aim of life, isn't it? To have happiness. So, and happiness is also peace as well. So that can only come when you have the satisfaction of knowing things, that this is how life works. So that's why we encourage you to pick up the Grail message and discover what it offers as a help to mankind. So thank you again. Look forward to you joining us next week, and have a great week. God bless. By the way, Brother Sayom is supposed to be here, but I haven't seen him yet, so I hope he's on his way. In the meantime, we're going to play a bit of music.
Burning Spear.
Yes. Yes, here we go. You Want Me To, Burning Spear.
You really want me to love you. You really want me to care for you. So it became my responsibility. So we are gonna take a trip. We can go to Trinidad. We can go to St. Croix. Yes, we can. We can go to Bahamas. Yes, we can, we can. You really want me to love you. You really want me to.